So yes, the 600 engine of course makes a return, but they've had to make a few tweaks to ensure that it will get through those emissions tests now. Now Kawasaki specifically cite revised cam profiles and revised intake funnels, as well as a new exhaust header and collector pipe, which they say also help to boost low to mid-range performance. But really this bike is all about revvy top-end power, and that's what it makes. 127 horsepower peak up at 13,000 RPM with the aid of Kawasaki's Ram Air system, power at 13,500 RPM, and so perhaps they had to cap the revs a little bit to meet those emissions regulations, and like they say, it's a little bit stifled elsewhere as well, so I think probably that's understandable. You'd rather see it on the market than not and sacrifice 5 horsepower, and also it should still be an absolute screaming hoot to ride. Now from a chassis perspective, they don't give side by side, it looks pretty much exactly the same as the previous generation. So you've got the same twin spar cast aluminium frame, the same 41mm Showa upside down separate function big piston fork with full adjustability. There should also be a fully adjustable shock at the rear too, and again you've got twin radially mounted 4-piston monoblock brake calipers up front from Nissin, biting down on dual 310mm discs. This time they've moved over to round though, they've moved away from the petal-shaped disc that used to be a little bit of a signature feature of the Kawasaki's. Then at the rear you've got a single pot caliper on a 220mm disc, and the tyres are fresh with Pirelli's latest Diablo Rosso 4s, which are the perfect choice for a bike like this, with a sporty design that still incorporates a few road-friendly features that accommodate both wet and dry use. So the ergonomics will be sporty and low at the front, and the weight's going to be roughly the same as well. The previous gen was 196 kilograms curb, so nice and slender, although you might see a little bit of a jump here because the more restrictive exhaust system, you know, most bikes now have plenty of precious metals in the catalyzer to scrape through the emissions, and so that does tend to add, you know, a kilogram or two. What they have been more explicit about though is the new front end, which they say has the distinctive ninja face with its purposeful aggressive lines. It also gets the mini aero winglets which are integrated into the fairings. No claims about front end downforce in the press release, but I guess they do add a little bit to the looks. And they also say this new front fairing now accommodates a hybrid projector and reflector headlight for the first time, which completes an all LED lighting package. It's also worth adding that the windscreen now gets some cutouts, and they say that'll reduce buffeting, which of course is going to improve rider comfort over time. Elsewhere though, in terms of styling, this bike a few little nips and tucks here and there, but that's because Kawasaki have this hugely consistent design language which is super modern and angular. Visually, the 6R fits right into the ZX lineup between the 4R, which was recently announced, and their ZX10R superbike. And generally as old, especially in that traditional punchy green paint job, it definitely stands out. But if you do want something a little more mellow, then I actually quite like this grey finish that they're now offering. It's got like a split design. You've got metallic graphite grey at the top and metallic Diablo black at the bottom, so it's got a bit of a half contrasty look, and I think it's a bit more stealthy and perhaps a little more close. Now, a big change in the cockpit comes in the form of a new 4.3-inch full-color TFT display, and this opens up smartphone connectivity via Kawasaki's Rideology app. And you've also got a few new little bits like the shift light, the riding mode indicator, and if you've got the phone integration hooked up, you've got the Bluetooth indicator as well as call and messaging notifications. Now, another eco riding indicator, I've tried it out on other Kawasaki's recently, and basically it just illuminates when you're moderate on the throttle. I guess it's there to encourage, you know, sensible, fuel efficient riding, but I think it's a bit at odds with the attitude and intention of a super sport bike like this that's meant to be revved to the moon and back and is more likely to be seen on the track than doing the sort of local commute. But perhaps somebody somewhere might find it useful. Much more fitting, in my opinion, to the sporty nature of this bike would be the KQS or Kawasaki Quick Shifter, and you've also got 3 levels of traction control, various levels of power modes, and 4 riding modes to choose from, so sport, road, rain, and rider. Now, pricing for this one starts at £10,599, which is just shy of $1,000 more than the previous iteration market over that time period. As for whether it's actually good, so have all the closest rivals, and they haven't made a comeback. So the Honda CBR 600RR, the Yamaha R6, and the Suzuki GSX R600, they're all gone, and so really on. The closest stuff would possibly be the Honda CBR 650R, which is also an inline 4, but it's a lot more chilled out and relaxed and road biased, and that's reflected in the more chilled out price of $8,500. Slightly more aggressive in the riding position is the Yamaha R7, that comes in at $8,910, but I don't think you can realistically consider it a true competitor for this bike because the parallel twin engine only makes 72 horsepower, which is not far off half. Really, the closest thing on the market is the Aprilia RS 660, and that comes in at $10,300. Again, I wouldn't say it's as peaky and aggressive as the Kawasaki, but it is the closest in terms of performance. And then maybe you've got to consider that people might want to move over from something like a middleweight naked like the Triumph Street Triple RS. That comes in at $11,295. Very similar in terms of if you want something with a proper sports bike riding position and a bit more track focused than the fairing, then the ZX6R actually might be quite tempting. But either way,
June 6th, Kawasaki will launch a new inline 4-cylinder sports bike again. From the special date, the EPA file says 2024 Kawasaki